want dis ons land, dis ons taal, en sonder soek kan ons gaan stories waar we lewe in die duine hoog gebou uit sand, die helder see en die goue straat, die landskap wat oor generasies vertel, die harte wat in ritme met die golwe val, ons land, ons taal.
Welkom by Kletskompas se 800ste episode sedert ons heel eerste uitsending en vandag is ook die 8de September 2022. Nou gisteraand op Business 7 se uitsending het Joe Daddy gesels met Theo Klein, Ekonoom van Simonis oor die nuwe brandstofprys formule onder meer. En een vraag is ook, hoekom is ons verlagings minder as die in Suid-Afrika? Brandstofpryse wat natuurlik ons almal raak, so bly ingeskakel vir vandag se onderhoud.
Met die golwe val, ons land, ons taal. Got me feeling fresh. Got me feeling fresh. Got me feeling fresh.
Die man hier langs my is gekoller en getaai. Dis Algeto Greg in die nuusstoel vanoggend. Algeto, kom ons spring sommer dadelik weg met die voorblad van vandag se uitgawe van Republikein. Ons zoom bietjie in net die hooffoto daar. Hy is al voorheen was hy 'n proponent, maar die oud joernalis Dan Steinman wat nou om ons sê maar amptelike dominee is in die hervormde kerk. Dis die hooffoto, jy kan die storie op bladsy 3 van vandag se uitgawe lees. En dan het ons gister in Windhoek gesels oor ons nuwe wetgewing oor die beskerming van hoë-kaai-roepers. Dis nou mense wat korrupsie aan die kaak stel. En die minister Algeto sê ons het $160 miljoen per jaar nodig.
Per jaar nodig.
Om hierdie wet toe te pas.
En sy sê daar is net die geld nie. So sê in haar ministerie, hulle soek nou die geld by skenkers en ontwikkelingsvennote van die land. Maar by die geleentheid, dit was eintlik 'n JPF geleentheid, die staatspensioenfonds, hulle het hulle eie webwerf ontwerp en hulle eie platform geskep vir hoë-kaai-roepers. Dit volg natuurlik kort op die hakke van 'n skandaal. Daar was korrupsie binne in die JPF ontbloot. Die ondersoek duur nog voort, maar nou is daar manier om enige verdagte aktiwiteite aan te meld en 'n mens kan anoniem bly. So dit is 'n stap in die regte rigting. Hulle het ook daar vir meneer Ethel Williams vanuit Suid-Afrika gehad. Hy is getuie in die staatskapping ondersoek wat Suid-Afrika onlangs voltooi het. En hy het gepraat van die nagevolge vir hom persoonlik. Hy is 'n dosent in etiek en bekende strategus vir besighede, maar na sy getye moes hy sy land verlaat. Daar is nagevolge vir hokkairoepers en hulle moet beskerm word. So hy sê dis 'n goeie stap in die regte rigting, ten minste dat GOtv nou so iets in stand gebring het.
Ja, ek weet van hierdie geld word natuurlik ook gebruik in 'n geval soos hierdie waar iemand sy inkomste verloor as gevolg van die feit dat hy help in ondersoek, dan kan hy of sy finansiëel ondersteun word.
Ja.
En ja, 2 mense wat reeds in die hof was oor daai $1 miljoen bedrog nou weer by die GOtv, maar ek wil jou vra, dink jy die minister is reg as hy sê daar is nie geld nie? As ons nou kyk na die totale begroting van die staat.
Dis alles 'n kwessie van prioriteite en jy weet ek voel Namibië is 'n ryk land vol arme mense. Ek voel as hulle sê daar is nie geld nie, dan bedoel hulle eintlik daar is nie geld vir jou nie of daar is nie geld vir dit nie. Dit is maar die waarheid.
Ook op die voorblad van dag Jan-Drey Dippenaar se verhoor wat ook voortduur daar aan die kus en ek dink emosionele oomblikke daar in die hof Algeto.
Ja, vir almal betrokke.
Hy het verskoning aangeteken, maar hy sê hy kan niks onthou van die ongeluk.
Ja, dit is maar baie wat sê hulle in Engels very convenient.
Ja, maar natuurlik is nie ons werk om uitsprake te lewer voor die tyd nie. Ons sal waarskynlik dan môre weer berig oor hierdie hofsaak.
Ja.
Ons blaai net so gou om, jy kan na bladsy 3 lees oor voedselonsekerheid in Namibië, een van 9 lande in Afrika waar ons probleme in die gesig staar en dan Algeto net so ietsie vinnig van bladsy 5 af is die Savanna, is die nuwe uitvoer abattoir, nog 93 beesboere wat totaal van 17 miljoen belê het. Dis nou sedert die eerste beleggingsvenster gesluit het. So het lyk of hulle nog steeds toenemend sukses behaal. As jy net kyk, 93 teenoor 17, dit beteken boere, jy weet daar is ook boere wat kleiner bedrae insit in hierdie projek.
En ek dink die boere sien nou as jy iets wil reg doen, dan moet jy dit seker maar self doen.
Nou ja, dit is hulle punt. Hulle is natuurlik baie besorg oor meatcow, dis die hele rede daar agter.
Ja.
Algeto, net om af te sluit, gisteraand het jy 'n gesprek oor mynbou gelei.
Ja.
En ek het net gewonder, wat is so 'n paar insigte wat jy kan deel met ons uit daai gesprek?
Oor die algemeen lyk die toekoms baie goed vir mynbou in Namibië. Ons het die kommissaris vir petroleum ook gehad op ons paneel en sy het bietjie klaring gegee oor die tydlyn in terme van daai ontdekkings wat ons nou onlangs vroeër in die jaar gekry het. Sy sê tot binne 8 maande behoort ons sekerheid te hê en binne 12 maande behoort ons, as ons nou die sekerheid kry van die kommersiële vatbaarheid van die ontdekkings, dan kan ons begin bou aan die infrastruktuur wat nodig sal wees om die olie te ontgin. Daar was ook verteenwoordigers van Afritin, die myn op Oeis. Hulle vorder sterk om nie net tin te ontgin nie, maar ook lithium. En daar was verteenwoordigers van die omgewingskommissaris was ook daar gepraat oor die ontwikkeling van ons wette wat die omgewing beskerm. Almal besef en erken dat mynbou het altyd 'n impak op die omgewing, maar ons kan dit so doen dat daai impak beperk kan word en ook om te verseker dat na die bron ontgin is, die omgewing weer reggestel word. So dit was oor die algemeen goeie nuus vir ons land.
Dankie Algeto, na daai gesprek wat jy steeds natuurlik op Facebook en ook op ons YouTube blad kan vind en weer daarna kyk. Dit was die nuus gewees, net hier na die spotprent en dan eers 'n bietjie nuus van Elvira Hatting daar op Grootfontein voor die onderhoud.
Nuus uit die noorde. Grootfontein het die afgelope Saterdag sy 50ste oesfees gehou, waar tydens die voorsitter van die Namibië Akkerbouraad, Michael Iyambu, gesê die is 'n baie belangrike mielieproduserende gebied, wat met vanjaar se oes van 38.000 ton vir die groter volume in die nasionale oes gesorg het. Daar was egter ook uitdagings. Kom ons kyk na wat by die oesfees gebeur het.
Daar is 'n grappunt vir ons en dit gaan rondom stoorkapasiteit in die area. Ons weet as die ouens wat dit moet doen, dit nie wil doen nie, of hulle vat te lang om dit realiseer, moet ons miskien inspring en kyk hoe best ons aan kan vat tussen energie en die boere. En ek praat van stoorkapasiteit.
Tydens die oesfees is meneer Attinel van die plaas Algier by Shimep as vanjaar se oeskoning gekroon.
Ladies and gentlemen, onze oeskoning vir die jaar 2022 goes to none other but Attinel. Kom ons geef hom 'n lekker applaus.
Dit is die 50ste oesjaar en die grootste oesjaar van die bestaan van hierdie oeskoningskap is. Nou ja, die mieliekoningskap het ek nie verwag nie. Ek sal eers my hemelse Vader die plek gee wat my geseën het en sy guns aan my gegee het.
A very, very topical issue worldwide, and joining us to discuss the matter is Theo Klein, economist at Simonis Storm. Hello, Theo. Welcome once again.
Good morning, Jamari.
Theo, we've just had the announcement. As from today, there is a significant relief at the pumps for the consumer. Can you just quickly summarize the trends in the fuel price in the past few months?
Certainly. So, yeah, after the war in Ukraine broke out and the West put sanctions on Russia, we've seen a surge in global oil prices that also led to higher fuel prices for us. Obviously, we are a net importer of fuel, so we remain vulnerable to whatever global price movements do. And I think the sanctions on Russia really hurt the rest of the world more than it hurts Russia. We see their economy, or especially their currency, already recovering back to pre-war levels. They continue selling oil to other countries. We now hear more and more how Turkey and India and China are sort of, increasing their trade with Russia. We still hear of European commodity trading houses bypassing sanctions and still buying oil from Russia. So we are also of the view that these sanctions hurt the rest of the world more than it hurts Russia. But sadly, we have borne the brunt of higher global oil prices in recent months because of the war in Ukraine and the geopolitical tensions that have arisen because of that. And I mean, at the same time, in recent months, we're now also sitting with a much weaker rand exchange rate. We started the year in January with just over 15.60 against the US dollar, and at the moment over 17. So that also has not been playing in our favor. Obviously, with oil being priced in US dollars globally, as the rand weakens, we pay a higher price.
Theo, one of the significant changes in this week's fuel announcement, a fuel price announcement, was that the Minister of Mines and Energy, Tamal Vendu, said that they are now using a new formula to calculate the basic fuel price. Just quickly, in layman's terms, explain to us what that means.
So the change that they've done, Germany, in the past, they've had two line items in their calculation. One was for shipping costs from South Africa, and the second one was shipping costs from overseas countries where we import our oil from. Now, in recent months, we have increased our imports of oil directly from overseas countries and less from South Africa, most likely also owing to the improvements made at Walvis Bay's port. So what they've decided to do is that because the imports of oil from South Africa has become insignificant or close to zero, they are going to take that line item out of their calculation or calculator that is used to determine local fuel prices. Because obviously the ministry would like to try and cover their importing or shipping costs of oil. So at the end of the day, consumers help cover those shipping costs as well. The sad thing is that in the past months, we've had two line items for shipping costs, amongst other costs or determinants in the fuel price calculator. So if they decided to remove the South African shipping cost line out of the calculator a few months ago, it could be that we would not have seen as drastic or severe increases in our local fuel prices. However, in their defense, I guess, obviously, as time progresses and as monthly data comes in, you have to continuously monitor and see where is our oil coming from before you can make that decision. So be it as it may, I think going forward at least, we will not have as severe increases in our local fuel prices based on the new calculator. However, I think what we should also be aware of, Germany, at the same time, they've increased the the price or the margin per liter for other cost line items in their calculator. So, for example, the fuel wholesaler margin has also increased by 20 cents, if I remember correctly. And then we must all remember that the road user charge, the MVA levy, the NAMCOR levy, all these levies that are part of our fuel prices, they have yet to be restored to their normal levels because the Ministry of Mines and Energy reduced them by about 50% in April. So, at some point we will need those levies to also be restored. And then last month, we also had the dealer margin increasing. So that was in response to local petrol stations saying that they're just not making profits or they're barely breaking even. So, they demanded a higher dealer margin. So, all that has also increased in the meantime. So that's there have been these other changes in their calculator as well. So I think time will tell whether removing South Africa's shipping cost is outweighed by the other movements that I've mentioned earlier.
Theo, it is always a bone of contention when there are fuel price decreases announced in Namibia and South Africa. And then the Namibians get extremely upset because why is the fuel price decrease in South Africa bigger than the one in Namibia? Why is that happening?
We must also remember, Germany, firstly, that our petrol prices and diesel prices are below that of South Africa's. So I think that in itself is a benefit for us. But so also, they have had larger increases than we had in the last couple of months as well. So with them being over 26 or around about 26 rand per liter and we only at 22, I think that in itself, is a positive for us as well. What I am aware of is that in South Africa, the reason why their fuel prices are higher than ours is because they have much higher levies and taxes than we do in Namibia per liter. That's the first thing. The second one is that they don't have a national energy fund that accumulates savings when they incur over recoveries. In other words, when they've sold fuel at too low a price than what they should have. When they've sold it at too high a price than what they should have, then they incur over recoveries. Those savings then get transferred to the National Energy Fund in Namibia. But South Africa doesn't have that mechanism. So whenever we have under recoveries, our National Energy Fund is able to withdraw some of their savings to finance the under recovery for us. So, I've done the calculation. If we did not have a National Energy Fund in Namibia, our petrol prices would have been over $25 per litre.
Wow.
At the moment. So I think, we must just be aware of that, that's the reason why our fuel prices differ. And it can also well be that due to different contracts that South Africa has, depending on the price that they bought from their suppliers, that's probably why they've had different levels of over recoveries, and therefore they could provide more relief to their consumers. But then the other thing is, if South Africa incurs an over recovery, that full over recovery is given to consumers, and then therefore prices will come down quite significantly. Whereas in Namibia, if we had an over recovery of $3, our Ministry of Mines and Energy might say, okay, consumers only get $1 of this over recovery. So that's why petrol prices only dropped by $1.20. But then the rest of the over recovery is savings that the government then puts into the National Energy Fund. And in that way, they build up their savings. So that's why our decrease was not as large as it was in South Africa. But I mean, that's a positive for us, because the more savings the National Energy Fund accumulates, the more they are able to finance under recoveries. So that in South Africa, if they incur an under recovery, that full under recovery has to be passed on to the consumer. But if Namibia incurs an under recovery of, let's say, $2, then they can maybe withdraw from their savings so that consumers only have to get a 50 cents or an 80 cent increase in fuel prices instead of the full $2 increase. So that's sort of the mechanisms behind our fuel price differences.
Theo, a final question. What is Simonis storm outlook for the global oil market at the moment?
Yeah. Generally, our outlook is fairly balanced, but I think it could potentially tilt to the downside for global oil prices towards the end of the year. On the what's causing oil prices to go down or to decrease going forward would be the increase in probability of economic recessions in advanced economies. So if there are recessions, obviously there's an expectation that demand for oil will decrease, and therefore the price should come down. But then, and certainly forecasts are showing global oil prices of 95, 93, around about US dollar per barrel by December this year. Then on the other positive side is that the rand typically weakens in the second and the third quarter of each year, and it typically strengthens in the first and the fourth quarter of each year. So if that long run pattern plays out, then the rand is likely to weaken in the fourth quarter, also then benefiting us in reducing the Namibian dollar of our oil imports. So that's on the positive side. On the negative side, we do have that OPEC recently announced that they want to cut production to try and stimulate oil prices. Obviously, it's in their best interest to have higher oil prices because that benefits their economies and revenues for their governments. So they've announced that they want to cut production. But then also, as things stand at the moment, Germany, the global oil market can be characterized by demand exceeding supply. And that has been so for the last couple of years, because we've seen less investment in refining and production capacity in oil producing and exporting countries. So, I mean, that's economics 101. If demand exceeds supply, the price should be rising or just remaining expensive. So that's why we sort of see global oil prices between 100 and 110 US dollar per barrel because of that situation. The other negative is that because of sanctions on Russia, we've seen oil reserves in other countries such as the US, the UK, and a few European countries going down. So as their reserves go down, obviously that means even less supply will be available in the future. So very short term, Germany, our view till the end of the year, we expect global oil prices to come in lower, and therefore we could probably still see more fuel price cuts in Namibia going forward. But medium to long term, the risks are to the upside for oil and for the global oil market.
Always the bearer of good news. Thank you, Theo Klein. Thank you for your insights, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Germany. Thanks for having me.
En nou vir ons nuus. Raadslede van NATO Fishing Enterprises het beweringe ontken van mensenmishandel of verwante oortredings deur die maatskappy rakende die wette op marine hulpbronne, arbeid of immigrasie. Namibiese owerhede het laasweek beweer hulle het minstens 48 vermeende mensenhandel slagoffers van 2 Namibiese geregistreerde vaartuie gered. Die polisie sê aanklagte wat teen die maatskappy direkteure oorweeg word, is onder meer mensenhandel, oortreding van die arbeidswet, wet op immigrasiebeheer en marine hulpbronne as ook moontlike bedrog. Volgens die polisiewoordvoerder, adjunct-commissaris Kwambi, kan die saak tot Junie teruggespoor word. Toe Namibian Fisheries Observers met steun van die polisie die Namibiese geregistreerde vissersvaartuie betrap het waar hulle na bewering die wet op visserye en marine hulpbronne oortree het. 'n Ondersoek wat steeds aan die gang is, het onthul dat hierdie mense lang ure sonder rus gewerk het. Hulle is selfs gedwing om te werk terwyl hulle siek was. Daar was geen mediese beamptes aan boord nie en nie genoeg komberse nie, sê Kwambi. Dit het gelei tot 'n ondersoek na vermeende mensenhandelslagoffers aan boord van die vaartuie MV Shangfu en Nata 2, beide in besit van NATO Fishing Enterprises. Die bemanning is gered en die 2 voertuie is as instrumente van vermoedelike misdaad geskit. Nou 'n lid van die maatskappy wat anoniem wil bly weens die erns van die aantuigings het aan NMH gesê: "Ons is eers op 1 September amptelik bewus gemaak van die ondersoek en die agterdog oor sekere wette wat dalk deur ons vaartuie oortree is. Ons beklemtoon graag dat ons bereidwillig was om enige owerhede by te staan in hulle huidige ondersoek. Ons vertrou die ondersoekprosedure sal sy loop neem en mettertyd ons onskuld bewys." Oor beweringe van bemanningslede wat sedert 2018 op die vaartuig vasgekeer is, het die bron gesê daar is lede wat in 2018 begin werk en hul kontrakte voltooi, huis toe gegaan en na 'n lang tyd weer teruggekom het omdat hulle dit geniet om op die vaartuie te werk. Een bemanningslid het volgehou het 'n beter lewensgehalte op ons vaartuig as by sy huis en het ook die inkomste nodig. Hy wou nie terugkeer huis toe tydens die pandemie nie en het soos ander bemanningslede sy verblyf op ons vaartuig verleng. Almal het die vryheid om te besluit wat hulle wil doen, het die bron verduidelik. Die mishandeling van ons bemanning is streng verbode. Ons verseker dat hulle al die toerusting, voeding en leeftoestande het waar hulle nodig het om gesond te wees en om op hul beste te presteer. Ons vaartuie voldoen aan HACCP, wat beteken ons het inspeksies geslaag, wat sertifiseer dat ons lewensomstandighede en die verwerkingsgebiede aan die Europese Unie se veiligheidsstandaarde voldoen, het hy gesê. Al ons bemanning ondergaan ook mediese ondersoeke voordat hulle vaartuig uitvaar om te verseker dat hulle gesond genoeg is om hulle pligte te verrig. Maar as jy graag meer wil lees, kan jy gaan na ons webwerf, dit is www.irongo.com.na, waar hierdie bron alle aantuigings verduidelik.
Vandag is daar troeteldiere op Republikeinse lesers fotoblad en omdat die lente hier is, wil ons sê, jy moet ook jou kamera en selfoon laat klik en jy kan altyd jou foto's en video's vir ons stuur op WhatsApp by 08117010 of natuurlik per e-pos lesers@republikein.com.na. Môre is Vrydag, dan is dit weer tyd vir 'n uitspeel aflewering van 'n Kletskompas, waarin Henriette en Marie so 'n bietjie 'n ligter noot gaan handhaaf. Totsiens.